Thank you so much for joining me on this Saturday morning at 9 o'clock in the rain after a beautiful Friday night. And for just supporting Ohio Dance today. We appreciate it. I'm a member of the Board of Trustees of Ohio Dance, and my role as Board of Trustees is I don't really know much about dance. I help them with a lot of legal compliance. I'm an attorney. I've been practicing for 12 years. I do labor and employment law and cybersecurity law. Like data breaches and things like that. A lot of my practice overlaps with technology law and includes social media law. Social media law is important, and it's become even more important because everybody's pretty much on it. That includes you, that includes your friends, it includes business owners, it includes customers. And kind of what my presentation is built for, it's built for people who own studios, who have businesses, who have employees, who might be managing employees, or maybe just for employees who don't really know what they should and should not be doing on social media. So there's a lot of material here. We'll try to cover it. Hopefully it's interesting, and hopefully it's not too boring for you guys. If you guys have any questions while we're going through this, please feel free to raise your hand, and we can kind of just have an interactive discussion, and I don't have to just stand up here and talk to myself for an hour. All right, so one thing that happens, and you guys may have started to see this or not, but a lot of employers are starting to vet their applicants on social media. So normally if you're going to vet an applicant and you want to do a background check on an applicant, you have to get their permission. They have to sign something and you have to get their permission in order to do it, or you violate the Fair Credit Reporting Act. Well, one thing employers have started doing is they just started vetting social media. Well, a lot of people have been really smart, and they have started locking down their privacy settings. And if I have any advice for you all today, it is to lock down those privacy settings. And make sure that you're only posting things to certain groups. I create a lot of groups, I create a lot of categories, so that a lot of my stuff only gets posted to certain people that I want them to see. My work people do not see what I do on a Friday night, and neither should yours. And if you're interviewing for jobs, you can curate your content so that you turn out and look like a better candidate and hide the things you don't want somebody to see. But what we're seeing is a lot of HR professionals, a lot of employers are actually going to social media to vet applicants. But one of the problems of vetting applicants to social media is that, as you know, there are a lot of things you're not allowed to look at an applicant. And the problem is that if you look at somebody on social media, a lot of things become readily apparent. Things that would not normally be on a resume, right? So on your resume, you don't put, they can probably gather your gender by your name in some instances, unless you have one of those androgynous, names. But they can gather your gender, your race. They can also find a lot of other things out about you by looking at your social media that they're not allowed to look at. Your age. Sometimes they can find out your religious affiliations. And one thing that has started causing a lot of problems in this area has been the genetic information. Genetic information is the newest protected category. So in terms of protected categories that employers are not allowed to look at when they make hiring decisions, or when they consider you for employment or moving you up for employment or anything in terms of conditions, we have race, we have age, marital status, your gender, your nationality, I don't know if I said veteran status, disability status. The newest one we have is genetic information. They cannot look at your genetic information. And you're like, well, of course they can't look at it. How are they going to get it? What are they going to do, suck DNA out of me and go test it to see if I have like sickle cell or I'm prone to breast cancer? No, they don't. That's not what employers do. But employers do access social media. And you guys probably saw it a lot last year with the Ice Bucket Challenge. Everybody was like posting these videos of doing the Ice Bucket Challenge, right? They put these like, before they did the Ice Bucket Challenge, they would say why they're doing it. And a lot of people were like, I'm doing this because my mother has it, or my father has it, or somebody in my family has it. That's genetic information. That's genetic information that an employer isn't allowed to look at or consider when they are for employment in any capacity. We also see it a lot with people doing causes. A lot of people will run for the cure because someone in their family has breast cancer. And so a lot of these things are on people's social media profiles. They're on their social media pages. Employers can see them. And so employers have to be really careful about how they screen applicants. And I don't say don't use social media. I say do use social media. I think social media is a great way to find applicants. It's a great way to find great applicants and find out if somebody is a true fit for your company. But the problem is that how you actually do it. And there's ways that you can do it to kind of make sure that you don't violate the laws. And the one thing I tell my clients whenever I counsel them on how they can do social media background screens the right way is that the person who does the social media background screen is somebody completely different than the decision maker. And the person who does the social media background screen, they basically write up a memo on the candidate after they do a social media background screen and say, this is what we found out on the candidate. The candidate loves dogs, they have pets. I did this for a veterinary clinic. And they wanted to see if somebody was best suited for an internship there. And they saw this person has dogs, they volunteer, so put relevant information that was relevant to the job. This person had visible religious affiliations on her Facebook page. She was an Orthodox Jewish candidate. That stuff never got into the final report that the decision maker saw. So if this person wasn't hired and later sued saying, you didn't hire me because you were on my Facebook page and saw that I was Jewish, and you are not. The hiring person is Catholic, and you didn't want to hire a Jewish person. The lawsuit is defensible because the memorandum that went to the decision maker, what the decision maker actually saw, never even said what the person's religious affiliation. So it's creating that firewall between the person doing the search, vetting the information, creating a clear line to the decision maker so that the decision maker doesn't take into all those things that a decision maker who's making hiring decisions doesn't get to look into. Other things is you have to figure out what actually you don't want. Because a lot of employers, a lot of times they look and they're like, oh, I see somebody drinking alcohol. I don't want that person hired. Well, that's kind of not good for a lot of roles, especially if you're looking for sales candidates. Because sales candidates and people who are in my field, one thing that I have to do as an attorney is I have to go get business. I have to go out in public and I have to entertain clients. Salespeople have to entertain people all the time. A lot of that is going to events. There may be alcohol consumption. There may be things like that. Just because somebody has a picture of their hand with a beer in their hand doesn't mean they should not be a candidate. It just means they drink on occasion. This isn't somebody falling down drunk and things like that. But that was a big thing, was keeping people out of work. And we've done a lot from the employment community trying to say that this is not something that's an excludable thing, especially considering the job. Now, one thing that's been big is sexual content, especially for school teachers. We've had a lot of sexual content. And we'll go through some of the Facebook firing cases, but just doing some things that are just inappropriate for the type of job that you would have. It just shows that you make bad decisions and that you don't have a very good reputation or character. The other thing is keeping records. These are employment decisions, and even though it's social media, under the law, you have to keep records of everything that you do when you're hiring somebody. Everything you vet, everything you do, you've got to keep those records in case there's a lawsuit. They have to produce those records. And that includes social media. So if you do a social media survey, everything you look at, everything you print has to be printed for the file. And a lot of HR people don't know that. Okay, so I'm not going to get into this a whole lot because I don't think that you guys are doing a whole lot of social media policies. But one thing that might help you is from an employee perspective. Because one thing that we see is we see a lot of overbroad social media policies. So if you are working for an employer, you're doing an internship or something, and you see your social media policy, and it says you're not allowed to say anything negative about the company on social media. That seems pretty broad, right? It's like, do you know what negative means? Because I don't really, what's negative to me may be completely different than what you think negative is. And what we've seen in the law recently is the National Labor Relations Board. And I don't know if any of you know what the National Labor Relations Board is, but the National Labor Relations Board is the government agency that governs over labor law. Labor law is, there's a difference between labor and employment. Labor law is when we're talking about unions, okay, unionized facilities, okay? Employment law is when we're talking about discrimination, retaliation, those types of suits that we're more familiar with, hostile work environment, sexual harassment. That's employment law. I do both. One thing that the NLRB has done with respect to labor and enforcing what they do is they've kind of extended it. Because one of their codes says that they can basically have control over anything that an employee would try to do to protect the terms of their work. And what they've interpreted that to do is they've been striking down a lot of employer social media policies, saying they're too overbroad. Nobody knows what these mean. You can't expect an employee, a reasonable employee, to know what the heck you're even talking about. And if an employee doesn't understand what you're talking about, they can't really follow the policy. If your policy is ambiguous, they don't have to follow it. So what's been happening is we've seen all these Facebook firing cases. People doing stuff on Facebook or social media, they're getting fired for it. Well, the NLRB has stepped in, and they've said you can't. In a lot of instances, your policies are too broad. They're overly vague. And here's the key language. Engage in concerted, protected activity. Okay? Or would have the unreasonable tendency to chill speech. They say you can't prohibit conduct that allows those things. Here's what it means in English. I won't go through these policies. These were ones that were said to be. Here's some cases from the NLRB that'll kind of help break it down and make it make a little bit more sense rather than just reading words out of the statute, because nobody likes to read words out of the statute. Here's a couple of cases that we had. One of the cases was the Hispanics United of Buffalo. Now, what was said on a social media post among coworkers? Now, the concerted activity means exactly what it says it means. Concerted, more than one, okay? It's kind of like conspiracy. There's got to be more than one person to do it. Social media, by its very definition, is a networking of people together. So anything that happens on social media is concerted because you're putting stuff out there not for your own. You're not writing in your diary. You're writing for other people to read it. So social media automatically gets that concerted effort portion of this. So what happened in this case was Hispanics United of Buffalo is like EMT services. And somebody wrote on Facebook page, a coworker feels that we don't help our clients enough. Some other coworkers and other people responded on that. The employer got word of it. Because here's what's going to happen. And one thing you need to know going into the workforce is it's not going to be your employer who finds something on your Facebook page. It's not going to be HR. They don't care. They don't have time to be scouring your Facebook page to see what you're doing. It's your coworkers who don't like you. That's where I get my evidence. I don't get my evidence from the HR director. I get it from the employee, the coworker who doesn't like that you were on leave. The employee who you took off work because saying you were sick and they have pictures of you at some music festival instead. That's where I get my evidence. And that's why the term frenemy really applies in the social media context because they're going to be the ones that are going to turn over the evidence that are going to make you lose your job. It's just the way it goes. And that's kind of what happened here. A coworker turns this over and says, look, they're disloyal to the company. They're saying these things, that we don't help our clients enough. Look, you can't have a disloyal person in the workforce. And employers think that they can do that. They think, oh, this person's disloyal. They said something negative, I can fire them. The NLRB stepped in and they said, no, you can't. You absolutely can't do that. So what we have to do is we have to look at the context of the speech. Because every gripe and every complaint about your employer is not going to be protected, right? You can't be like, my supervisor sucks. Okay, that's just a gripe. Okay, you didn't say, my supervisor sucks because my supervisor keeps treating me differently than they treat white employees. Or my supervisor sucks because he won't give me the pay raise that I'm entitled to, or that I think I'm entitled to. Right there, we're complaining about wages. We were complaining about unfair treatment. We were complaining about things that we just went over that are protected. Talking about your wages is protected. You're allowed to talk about wages in the workforce. They can't stop you from doing it. And here, the context of this was a coworker feels we don't help our clients enough. That, by its very definition, is talking about a concerted effort to talk about the terms and conditions of your work. How your work is affecting your clients is by definition a term and condition of your work. So everyone who was terminated was reinstated. The NLRB said this was an illegal termination and they have to rehire them. One of my favorites was this case. This is the Betty clothing case. This was a bunch of kids your age, students your age. They're in Vegas. They work at this clothing store. And it's a bunch of younger girls working in a clothing store, and they're mad. They feel that there isn't enough security, that they're walking out late at night and they're scared because there's no lighting. Things aren't being locked up correctly, and they were fearful, and their supervisor didn't care. They get into this long Facebook. I mean, the screenshots of it are crazy, but it's this long Facebook, you know, and a lot of it's griping. I mean, a lot of it is just, my supervisor sucks, yeah, I know, totally, I hate her, whatever. But as you go down in the feed, somebody wrote this, and they got it wrong. I mean, there's a lot of errors in what they said, but they said, they go, basically, tomorrow I'm bringing in my law book, and this stuff is violating the California workers' rights law, and boy, are they going to be sorry. Well, the employer fired all of them. There were 3 employees that were involved in this Facebook conversation. The employer got this, because the employer, the supervisor, was friends with them. They're all, never be friends with your supervisor. But, you know, just don't, ever. And if you're a supervisor, don't friend your subordinates. It's not ever going to work out well for you. So what happened is they turned this in, they all got fired. They filed a complaint with the NLRB. They filed an unfair labor practice charge, and the NLRB made them hire them all back. They said, you're wrong, you're getting all your back wages back for all the time you've been out of work, and you're reinstated, which had to be totally awkward later. You know, whenever they're like, hey, we're back. Bet you wish you wouldn't have fired us now. I mean, we know how everybody, people act in the workplace. So there's also one where they say, well, our customers could have potentially saw it. And they said something negative to our customers. And again, an employer is not going to be able to use our customers could have seen it as an excuse. Because again, you have to look at the context of the conversation and determine whether it was protected or not. I get calls all the time from employers who are like, my person did this, my employee did this, and I want to fire them immediately. And I always have to say, send me the screenshot of the conversation, and I have to take a step back and pause and really look at what was said to see if we have a protectable issue or not. I mean, this stuff's fun, it's interesting, it's all happening on social media, but there are legal implications to it, and as a lawyer, I have to look to see if I have Section 7 issues, if I have Title 7 issues. Section 7 is the NLRB stuff, whether the NLRB is going to get involved. Title 7 is whether there's harassment. Title 7 is that big federal law that protects your right not to be sexually harassed in the workplace, discriminated against because of your gender or your age or whatever, your ethnicity. And so I have to make sure that things like that, because people make statements on social media a lot of times, and they are harassing to a coworker. They make horrible statements about someone's race or their, and we'll go through some of those in a little bit. But a lot of employers say, well, my customers could have seen that, and it just makes the company look bad. Well, the law has said employers can only do so much. You know, yeah. Do you have customers who could see stuff? Yeah, you have customers that can see stuff. But a customer, your interest and your customer and your reputation with your customer does not outweigh your employees' rights to free speech and your employees' rights to not have their Section 7 rights trampled. And one thing you have to remember, too, that's really interesting, that a lot of people don't know, is everybody gets on social media and they say, and I say free speech. You got to be really careful about free speech. And here's why, in the employment context. Everyone's like, oh, I can say whatever I want. I have First Amendment free speech rights. There are 2 types of employment. There is public employment and there is private employment. If you are hired by a private employer, you do not have free speech. It's not protected in the employment context. It just isn't. They can fire you for whatever they want, as long as it's not protected by another law, the Constitution not being one. If you're a public employee, so for example, you're an employee of this university. This is a state-run university. It is a public university. You have free speech rights. If you say something and you're fired for it, you have a freedom of speech defense. You can say, I have freedom of speech. First Amendment. Because it's public. But if you're private employment, be careful saying that, because you don't. It's very different. But people say it a lot. I like it. They don't know any better. Now you guys do. You can laugh with me at that when they are like, I can say whatever I want. It's freedom of speech. You're like, no, you really can't. Your employer could totally fire you for doing that. Yes?
How did that come to be that private employers were saying that, or that private employers were taking away the First Amendment?
Well, a lot of people, and you'll read it. You'll see it. You'll see it on your own Facebook feeds. Anytime you see a Facebook firing case, or people defending that they got fired, somebody's like, I said something on social media. And we'll go through some of these cases, and they're like, I have freedom of speech. What I do privately on my Facebook page is protected because I have freedom of speech. Yeah, but your employer who fired you was a private employer. It was McDonald's. It was, the Holiday Inn. That's private. You don't have you don't have that freedom of speech right. So they say, I can say whatever I want about anybody I want. I can say what I want about my supervisor. My supervisor is a jerk, and I don't like my supervisor. Or they can say things that are racist about people. Well, if your employer is an employer who that's going to be bad. So we've seen a lot with like Hobby Lobby. Very Christian-based. Okay? If you work for Hobby Lobby, you get on social media and you tag Christianity, they're probably going to fire you if it's not protected in some other way. And they can probably get away with it, depending on what you said. Because that is not freedom of speech. That is not going to be probably protected speech. Unless I can get that covered under some other type of protected speech, like Section 7 of the NLRB that we talked about, concerted activity about terms and conditions of your employment, they could probably use it to fire you because they aren't public. They're private. And you're only protected by certain other laws. You're protected by Title 7. You're protected by NLRB. But you're not protected by freedom of speech. You're only protected freedom of speech for public employment. But everybody thinks that they have First Amendment rights. They think that. They don't understand the difference between public and even lawyers do it. I get cease and desist letters. I get threat letters all the time from very young lawyers, and they will come at me and they'll go, your client fired my client and he has freedom of speech and I demand you reinstate him. And I'm like, not a public employer, not subject to the First Amendment, go away.
So I have a question just about like the historical context of that.
Sure.
Just like how did that come, like what were the specific cases that they decided that
The First Amendment only covers public.
Yeah.
That's what the Constitution says.
Oh, okay.
Is it along the same lines as like private and public universities about how it's Catholic university, they have different things
Yeah,
like that?
because if you're public, okay, if you're a public university, you're accepting public funds. You are subject to the public taxpayers. It is a public university, the university for everybody in the public. Private don't have that. They are not accepting public funds. To the extent they are accepting public funds, there are restrictions on the use of those funds, but typically they're not. So when you accept public funds, you agree to be public, you accept those funds for providing services, you agree to certain things, and being under the Constitution is one of them. And that's just the way it is. So that's just the way that it's been set up from the beginning. You know, you're a private employer, you get to do things the way you want them. You know, in Hobby Lobby, the contraception case, that if you are a religious corporation, you do not have to pay for things that you do not want to pay for. That was a private. If that was a public company, they would very much have to. Abide by the Constitution, abide by Roe v. Wade, they would have to do those things. Abide by Obamacare. But they were private, and they do not. And that is what the Supreme Court held. So there is a distinction. So when you hear people say, First Amendment, I was fired, think about who their employer is. Because most of the time, they probably do not have First Amendment rights to freedom of speech over what they say about what their private employer does and does not do. So that's, if you take nothing away, you learned that today. The other case, and this was the very first Facebook firing case that we ever had that went before the NLRB. And what happened was, this was a BMW dealership, and some customer comes in, and the salesman, being all whatever, let a 13-year-old drive a Range Rover, and the kid drove it right into like a water thing. He just did. And so the guy is like, he wrote all kinds of stuff. So this other salesman who's just like, you've got to be kidding me. And he's like, this is what happens when you let a 13-year-old, do this, and this is your car on drugs. And the employer got really mad. And the employer fired him. He's like, you're mocking me. You are a salesman here, your job is to sell my cars, and you've completely just mocked everything I've done. Well, the employee had said a million things that day on Facebook. They were having this big client event, and he was like, they were having hot dogs and stuff, and he's like, these hot dogs are stale, I can't believe we would serve these to our clients, right? So the guy starts making an argument, because technically, you fired me because I was complaining about conditions of my work, the hot dogs. That's why you fired me, because I was making us look bad to our customers. But that's a term and condition of my work. The NLRB drilled down on it, found out that these were really the reasons. The employer was really upset because of this damage. And he was making fun of this damage. It didn't have anything to do with the hot dogs. He said, technically, the hot dog complaint probably was a protected complaint. They're really broad with these things. They really interpret them broad. But they said, but this waterlog issue, that's not protected. That is mockery. And they actually upheld the termination of this guy for making these comments and making fun of this employer. Employees can get away with a lot on social media. They really can. There are very few Facebook firing cases where the employee did not get back wages or get reinstated. They're allowed to say a lot. This is a case in point. They reinstated an employee who went on Facebook and called his boss these things. And the reason they did is because the employee said that the only reason he said it is because he registered a complaint about his wages with his employer, and his employer ignored him. So he took to social media, made all these statements. So I don't know that that's actually, he says that was the truth, who knows? People make up a lot of stuff. But they actually made them rehire this guy who said these things, because he said, hey, it was because of a protected complaint. And he didn't listen to me because of my protected complaint. The NLRB is really broad. So if you think something happened and you got fired wrong, don't go to court, go to the NLRB. They will probably give you more rights and more protection than a court will. And I actually had a case recently, and I felt bad for the plaintiff. I'm defense side. I work for companies. I defend companies against their employees, suing them. That's what I do. So I got really upset because I'm defending this case, and it was a good, I mean, this person really was not, like, they fired this person for some really, not cool reasons at all. And I'm defending the company, and I win the case. Because he sued in court. He brought the case in court. He made a Title VII argument, claiming it was like harassment or whatever. And I'm just sitting there, and he was a young lawyer, and I'm just like, man, you should have went to the NLRB. Going through court is not going to get you anywhere with this. If he would have went to the NLRB would have found a violation of the National Labor Relations Act and would have reinstated his client and provided his client back wages. And he completely did a disservice because he wasn't an employment lawyer. And there's a lot of weird stuff in employment law, like the NLRB, like all these weird agencies, like the Department of Labor, all these things that govern employment that general attorneys don't know. They just don't know them, they're not before them. And it was really sad for his client, because his client probably had about a $200,000 case and completely lost it by just bringing in the wrong form. And that was her loss for hiring somebody who doesn't do labor and employment law. So here's the lesson of this. Employees can complain about the terms and conditions of their employment, but if they mock the company for things that are entirely unrelated to them and their job conditions or their coworkers, the employee can be disciplined. And so this is what the recourse, do employers actually have. Employees are not protected when they aren't talking about workplace conditions. Workplace conditions can be really broad. So you got employee acting alone is not concerted. But pretty much anything on social media is considered concerted just because of the nature of it's a social media, it's social mechanism. And there are limits on what groups of employees can say about a company. And that was the talking about company's products. If you disparage your company's products, if you disparage the company probably will have protection. There's a new case that says we probably will if you are disparaging customers and things like that. Another thing you've got to watch out for, if you are in employment and you do have an employer and the employer does have a social media policy, and even if they don't have a social media policy, they probably do have a confidentiality policy. So be careful when you're making comments. You're still bound. Even off duty, you are not off the clock ever. You are always watched and you are always monitored. And you can be punished for off-duty conduct, especially in the state of Ohio, because we do not have an off-duty conduct law. We just do not. Colorado does, which is why you can smoke pot and still go to work in Colorado. You can't do that here. One, it's not legal here yet. And we don't have an off-duty conduct law. You can still be punished for things that you do off-duty that are legal, but your employer may not like. We don't have one of those laws yet. So, whenever you're talking on social media, be careful not to make racist comments about coworkers or anybody. It can show that you're a racist. Somebody who is, if you make a statement about someone who's Asian, or you make a statement about somebody who's white, or you make whatever, even if you don't say it about a specific coworker, it shows your animus. It shows that you have an animus toward a group of people. And if somebody feels offended in the workplace, it can cause a hostile work environment situation. It may not really, they may think it does. And all that matters is what they think. So don't put stuff out there like that. You don't need to. It doesn't help your character, it doesn't help your reputation. So avoid making any statements about race and gender and things like that, or commenting on them, or even liking stuff like that. I know that it's difficult, but those things can come back to haunt you. And like I said, it's not going to be your HR department that's going to catch it. It's going to be your coworkers every time, your frenemies. Also, confidential information, trade secret. Don't disclose it online. Employees don't understand sometimes what is, and they say things about certain things that they're working on. Hey, I'm working on this big project today, and they'll say something. The employer can get really mad and say, you weren't allowed to talk about that. We're working on this big, this big deal, trying to get this deal together. Working on this big, we're bidding for this piece of work. You're not allowed to say stuff like that and stuff. So you're normally protected by your confidentiality provisions of your handbook or a confidentiality clause. So be careful saying, talking about that or your company's trade secrets. Employers can go really far what they think is confidential. Okay. The other ones, there's another line of cases. We're going to go 2 lines of cases. We're going to go to the liars, and then we're going to go into just the people who are stupid. Okay? All right. So these are great. She was on FMLA leave. Okay, FMLA leave is family medical leave. So she had a doctor's note, FMLA leave. She's like, I need to be off work. I am completely incapacitated. This is only one picture of 125 pictures that hit social media over the weekend of her being completely incapacitated, drinking and partying and dancing at some Polish festival in Michigan. Well, the employer didn't term her right then, which we were like, don't term her right now. Because in FMLA leave, you can't just cut someone's FMLA leave off. You gotta let them finish it. Otherwise, they have an interference claim. There are 2 types of FMLA claims, retaliation and interference. You can't retaliate, do bad things to people who take FMLA leave, and you can't interfere with the leave. So she had like a couple weeks left. They let her finish the leave, okay? They gathered all their evidence. They have a fraud policy, right? Most employers do. They bring her in as soon as she gets back. They're like, how are you? Oh, better. Did not feeling that great. I'll live. So then they're like, how do you feel about our fraud policy? And I don't know exactly how the conversation went. I can just imagine in my own head how I think it went, how awesome it would have been if I was like doing this to somebody. Because I do it on cross-examination with people all the time. But I only know what the court documents tell me. So I think they were like, we like our fraud policy too. And then just laid 125 pictures of her that they printed out on social media. Not only were these on her page, they were coming from her friend's page. Her friends were uploading stuff and tagging her. She couldn't keep it off quick enough. She wasn't even trying. So they pulled stuff off her friend's page, they pulled stuff off her page, and they have all these pictures of her just having a great old time. And so they termed her. They terminated her for violating their fraud policy and for abusing FMLA leave. She sued them. And the employer won. The fact, I couldn't believe she sued them. Like, this is amazing. That happened. There was another lady right after this, and she went to Mexico on her FMLA leave. She wasn't supposed to be able to walk or lift. She couldn't walk, and she wasn't able to lift 5 to 10 pounds. Those were her restrictions. They find all these pictures of her going to Mexico on a jet ski. She was just sitting on a jet ski in her defense, and then she's laying on a bed. She's got like 2 hands with 2 beers in them on Facebook. So they could bring her in too. And they're like, can you explain this? She's like, well, technically, I'm not walking. Technically, she wasn't lifting more than 5 pounds. I mean, we know how much beers weigh. So they're like, well, shoot. I mean, she has a decent point. And it didn't say you can't go on, you don't have to stay at your house while you're on FMLA leave, unless your employer has another policy that says it does, but FMLA on its own doesn't. Some employers have policies that say if you're on FMLA leave, you have to stay in the vicinity of your home. So watch out for those policies. If you work for Ohio Bell, AT&T, they have that policy because they pay you for FMLA leave. Normally FMLA leave is unpaid. So they were like, okay, well, how did you get down there if you can't walk? Not allowed to walk. She's like, well, I've been in a wheelchair. They've been wheeling me around. They're like, Great, so we're gonna pull the airport security footage, because you know airports have cameras like everywhere. So, okay, cool, we flew out of whatever, I forget, she was in Michigan too. Michigan people do crazy things. So they were like, fine, well, we'll pull the Detroit, airport footage and we'll, check us out. She finally came clean and told them. But the funny thing about that lady, and I usually have a picture in here, but I took it out, is that she was like yelling at. She came back from leave. She was like, I've been on leave and nobody even sent me a card. She was like she was one of those people, and they were just like, oh honey, we're gonna fire you. Oh, we are so gonna fire you for this. And they did. All right, so these are just the stupid things that people do. The first one I think was really crazy. This was really like what viral is. You guys heard of the Sacco, the person who tweeted? She was leaving from America to go to Africa. She was a PR rep. And she tweeted this before when she's getting on the plane. So she tweets this on the plane, turns her phone off. She only has 170 followers, right? That's all she has. It only goes out to 170 people. By the time this chick landed, she had been fired. It had been seen by I don't even know how many hundreds of thousands of people had retweeted this. So by the time she lands in Africa, she's lost her job. And even still to this day, she wrote this, she was interviewed in one of these big magazines, and that's where I actually pulled this graph. It was from an article that was done on her about how it's just kind of ruined her reputation. I mean, she's a PR. Your job is to make sure companies and people don't get in trouble. And you do one thing that's like national crazy news, a viral tweet that could not have been worse. And so she was talking about how it's really ruined her life. She did get another job, but she will always be this person who did this. So really think before you do stuff. You just really have to. Or make your account private and make sure only people that like you are on it. This was a former 911 operator. A lot of people say, I don't read her stuff anymore because it's disgusting, so you can read it. But this is a 911 operator who is supposed to make sure that people get care that they need when they need it. And you can tell by this person's tweets that if she thinks for 1 second that somebody's voice or last name or name has any type of ethnic component to it, you would question whether she gets the police involved or if she waits just a little bit longer when seconds are important to someone's life. 911 actually gave her a chance to say her account was hacked, and she said, no, my account wasn't hacked, that was me. That was totally me. And so she was fired. But people do this. And I wish that I could say that we've learned anything from social media, that we've learned to be better, that we've learned to not only be better humans, but we've also learned to be better about what we say. But we haven't. This was 2013. This was like 3 months ago. This is a veterinarian. That's her job. That's her job. This is what she tweeted. My first bow kill. That says cat with an arrow in its head. If you didn't know what's sticking through that cat's head, it's a bow and arrow. This is my first bow kill, LOL. The only good feral tomcat is one with an arrow through its head. Vet of the Year award, gladly accepted. So these are things that question whether somebody can actually do their job, if they have the character. Because whether you're good at certain functions of your job, you still have to have the right character and the right reputation for that job. This is the former cop. This was last month in South Carolina. And in the midst of all this racial profiling and all this racial insurgence out of Ferguson, and we have this after the South Carolina flag issue. And he made some other comments as well. He did not just, have pictures. This is a former college professor. She was at the University of Memphis, I believe. This was one of her statements. She was an assistant professor of sociology, University of Memphis. Whiteness is most certainly and inevitably terror. White folks think that if they are nice to you, they are above the critique of whiteness, white supremacy, or structural racism. Cue the violins. The Confederate flag is more than a symbol of racial superiority. It is the ultimate symbol of white heteropatriarchal capitalism. I don't care how big your words are. Sometimes they're just wrong. And people make statements about people of other ethnicities, minorities. They also have started really coming back on the majority of whites. And this was an instance where we had somebody saying things about whites after the Confederate flag issue, and she came under fire based on what her job was. This was a WWE star's girlfriend, and she was fired after making Nazi-themed post. She was talking about how like cool Hitler was and stuff like that. So she became. So this one was really interesting. This just happened like 2 weeks ago. Can an employee be fired for racist comments by his Facebook friends? So this guy posts this, and you can see a little adorable little child in the back. The child is African American, but the guy didn't even say anything. This guy says nothing at all. His post is just a picture. It's a selfie, and it just happens to have this little adorable munchkin in the background. And here we go. I didn't know you were a slave owner. Help feed this poor child today. Let's see, what is it? Kunta Kinte. Dude, where the hell did you get a black kid? The pop-up little black Sambo book. Sent him back, dude, those, whatever. So the question was, and this came to his employer's attention, because what did he do? Did he do anything? You don't really see him posting on stuff, do you? He liked some of these stuff. You can't see the likes with those little arrows, so those little guys. He liked a couple of these things, the racist ones. And so the question was, and he was fired. The question was, can he be? So from a legal perspective, I'm like, so we go, was it legal for the company to fire him? Probably. He's complicit. He's complicit in racism. And as I said before, just because you may not be making the statements yourself and you may not be making them directly to a coworker, what if he works with an African American person? Guess what? They don't really like that guy anymore. And they certainly don't trust that guy anymore. And they certainly are really hesitant about what he thinks about them. That creates racial hostility in the workplace. And that's not ever a good thing. Because everything he does and every interaction with any person of color is going to be tainted because that person of color will always think he has racial animus toward them, for whatever reason. And there's nothing he can do to stop it now because he put it out there into the world. What I would have done, if that would have been their responses, I would have started getting on that. You delete that. There's a little arrow that allows you to delete or edit anything. It also now allows you to take off other people's comments off your page. I would have taken their comments off if I really wanted the picture up. If I thought it was a really great selfie that just had to stay in the social media world. But he didn't do anything. He let it go and he liked it. His employer didn't like that. But does it mean you should fire? One thing we do have to check about is employment agreements. Some of you will be at-will employees, which means they can fire you for anything they want. Some of you will have, which is most of the case. Unless you're a high-level executive, you usually don't have an employment agreement. You may have an agreement that says some of your terms of employment, but it basically says you're still an at-will employee, we can fire you for whatever you want. But check your employment agreements. Your employment agreements may say you can only be fired for these certain things, and if it doesn't follow one bulleted list, they can't fire you. So that's one thing I always have to check. When they call me and they go, can we fire this guy? I'm always like, do they have an employment agreement? Then I go, what were the comments? Are they protected under the NLR, the National Labor Relations Act? Then I check Title VII. Then I go from there and determine what we can do, whether it's discipline, whether it's termination, whether it's a write-up. Because like his instances, I don't know that I would have fired him, but I probably would have written him up for hostile work environment, for just creating a negative environment, and put him on warning and monitored his conduct. And just had a training session for all the employees about how we treat people in the workplace and how we conduct ourselves on and off work, and gone from there. And if anybody registered a complaint for race discrimination or hostility, then he probably would have been under fire. So this just kind of talks about what I do, get the employee side of the story, ask the employee if the employee has seen the comments by the friends, basically just go through, what did you see, why didn't you stop it, things like that. The new issue we're having is video. Employees are taking video of everything now. And there was, did you see the Starbucks video? There was a Starbucks video that recently hit the internet, like last week. And a barista went after a customer. I don't know what happened, but the barista was like going off on this customer. It's the same thing where there was a TV reporter and she was like, got mad at somebody and customers filmed her saying, "You're white trash, go back to your trailer, I'm on TV." And she basically lost her job because somebody else filmed it. They're filming these things. I mean, your camera, it used to just be a camera, now your phone's video. Not only Vine's least of our worries, it's usually Instagram video and Facebook video that's getting everybody in trouble because those are the applications people are using. Vine only reports for 6 seconds, Instagram gives us 15 seconds, Facebook gives us unlimited video length longevity. And so that's what we're seeing. So people are videotaping you. You may not be videotaping, but people are videotaping your conduct. Everything you do is now can be under scrutiny. I will not get into this one. Do any of you run corporate accounts? You run your corporate social media accounts for your employers? Well, this will be fun. We'll go through if you ever get to. Controlling your corporate accounts. This is just stuff that people with corporate access have done. One, taking the training wheels. These are the top problems of corporate accounts and people running them. Taking the training wheels off too fast. I find it ironic that Detroit is known as the Motor City, and yet no one here knows how to effing drive. That was tweeted by Chrysler Autos on their corporate account. This was from the American Red Cross. Ryan found 2 more bottle packs of Dogfish Head's Midas Touch beer. When we drink, we do it right. Hashtag getting slizzard. American Red Cross. You want to donate $10 now for relief? This was from the Home Depot. Which drummer is not like the others? Oh, it's just racially offensive. And here is Home Depot's apology, because most of the time companies have to apologize. We have 0 tolerance for anything so stupid and offensive, deeply sorry. Tackling politics from corporate accounts. This was said, Obama's grandma even knew he was going to be bad. She died 3 days before he became president. Guess where that came from? KitchenAid. That came out of the KitchenAid account, because why is a mixer caring about politics? It shouldn't. It really shouldn't. I don't know if you guys saw the John Oliver thing, and I should have put it in, but John Oliver basically has said, he talks about social media and on Twitter, and he says that Twitter is it's like a cocktail party, and corporations have no business being in it. It's like everybody's having fun and talking about what they're doing, and then all of a sudden, it's like Skittles comes in and starts, talking in the middle of your, party about something stupid. It's like they have no business here. If you guys have a chance to watch it, I should have put it in here, and I just forgot to. But it's like really all these corporations get into stuff, but they don't think about the timing of them and what they might think. This is from the American Rifle Association, which is fine. Good morning, shooters. Happy Friday. Weekend plans. Would have been great if we just had a school shooting a day before, where I don't know how many kids were murdered. Timing. In case you're bored during the storm. American Apparel. There's a reason this company is bankrupt. They did this during the big snowstorm. They're like, hey, if you're bored, you can go to our online sale. I don't care about your online sale because my house is completely flooded and I just lost everything I own. So, sorry, I don't want an ugly t-shirt from American Apparel right now. If you could just not do this to me, that'd be great. They didn't care. All impacted by Hurricane Sandy. Stay safe. We'll be doing lots of Gap.com shopping today. Exactly. Because people lost everything. They don't need a new Gap t-shirt. They probably do. But right now, probably not the best time to try to get a new customer base. Urban Outfitters, this storm blows, but free shipping doesn't. You don't have a home to send anything to anymore, but we'll do it for free. SpaghettiOs, take a moment to remember Pearl Harbor with us. Yeah, it's like, what? What are you doing, SpaghettiO, dude? Why are you here? You don't need to be here. We don't celebrate Pearl Harbor. We do not celebrate Pearl Harbor. That was a horrible thing that happened. Do it differently. Automatic tweets are a bad thing. This one's funny, and a lot of them do it. It's funny that American Air is responding to every tweet coming their way, especially when this happens. Thanks for your support. It's like, what do you say? Congratulations to American Air and U.S. Airways on creating the largest, crappiest airline in the world. Automatic. Thanks for your support. We look forward to a bright future. That's also, don't go out night tweets. This was one where they fired the person in charge of HR, who was in charge of social media, and the person live tweeted everybody's firings. You know, it's hysterical. Always cut down the access to the person who's going to be your social media person if you're gonna fire them and all their friends. Because they're not gonna be nice to you on social media. This went viral pretty quick. Another one you do need to think about is if you are being paid by a company. So you're being paid by a company to do something, and you start basically endorsing them. Okay, you basically say, this is the best company ever. I love this company so much. This company that offers the best services. This company offers so. You have to disclose to your employee. You have to disclose your affiliation with them. Or the Federal Trade Commission can come after you, basically the company, because it's an improper endorsement. You have to disclose relationships if you are indeed endorsing and you have a relationship to the company, if you're being paid for it. And as an employee, sometimes you are being paid for your endorsements. So you just have to be careful what you're saying. If it's in the form of what can be interpreted as an advertisement, you have to put basically hashtag this is an ad, or I work for the company. So basically you say, as an employee of this company, I know that we offer, like some way where you disclose the relationship in your social media. So somebody reading it in isolation wouldn't think that it's just an endorsement of some sort. I won't get into this, so, because you don't need it. You don't need board meeting stuff. I'm trying to get some stuff that's funny, interesting. We have 1 minute. What else do I have? I get more fodder for my presentations like every single day. I really do. All right, this is me, folks. I am a Columbus lawyer. Like I said, my affiliation with Ohio Dance. I do this type of law. You guys have any questions for me or other things that you've ran into that you want to, you're like, is that real? Can they do that? Or anything? You're just so blown away by all this insaneness. Yes.
I mean, I don't know if this really could be anything, but the CIA tweeted from their account, no, we do not know where Tupac is.
Yeah, that was their very first tweet, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the very first CIA tweet. And it was just humor. And that was one of those things where they were just being humorous, because they said that that's one of the questions they get all the time.
I'm sure.
Yeah, and they were just being, funny. So, and that's the thing, like social media done right is really cool. Like whenever we were doing like the Super Bowl and all the lights went out at the Super Bowl, and Dunkin' and like Oreo did something about, like, they did a really cute, like right then they were like, something about Dunkin' with the lights off or something. It was really cute. It went viral and it was like, wow, that's so cute. And they got a lot of good advertising press for being so clever and so cool, like when something happened. The problem is that a lot of times it's done wrong. For every Oreo, there's a SpaghettiOs, and there's a Home Depot, and there's a KitchenAid. People just get it wrong. And that's why having somebody who's great at PR, who's clever, they can earn you a lot of money. But people who are bad at it are bad at it. And it's really bad because everybody comes into something as their own perspective, their own background, their own personal views. That personal view of yours where you think it's fine. Most people don't do stuff to be bad. They don't know they're being bad. They don't know other people could see it a different way. And that's why being a PR person is very difficult, because you have to be able to see the needs of the company in the way that the masses will interpret something. So you don't offend anybody, because everybody is offended. And most of these things are just really offensive. There really isn't a gray area with these things. Do you have anything else?
Yeah. Is it bad to tweet or on Facebook or any kind of social media to use swear words?
Yeah.
Okay.
Employers do not like it if you're looking at, because it demonstrates poor judgment.
Okay.
Yeah, I do it all the time. I do. I just do. I'm one of those people who I cuss so much I actually forget their bad words. That's just kind of the way it is with me. And that's just, they're just adjectives, right? That's just kind of what they are. They're nouns for me at this point. But I wouldn't, not at your age. I would definitely keep that clip locked down and closed. Just because employers can be looking at it. If you're in the job market, make sure that stuff's cleaned up. I just would. Now, I'm a 12-year attorney. My boss, they know how I am. They hired me because of how I am, that I am aggressive, I am a spitfire, I am a, that's what they like about me. And I went to them and I was like, this is me, take it or leave it. This is how I talk, this is how I dress, this is how I am. I don't want to work for a company that's not okay with it. And my boss was like, cuss word, yeah. So I was like, okay, we can do this. Then we can do this. This company, I feel at home here. So, that's the thing. Jobs are finding, it's got to be a right fit for you too. Yeah, you want paid, but it's got to be a right fit. But I definitely I'd watch it and make sure that type of stuff is locked down. Definitely keep it out of your public profile. Yeah. But I use it all the time. So, I would just, for you, I would probably, don't be me. You're not your whole life ahead of you. You're not corrupted and already tainted with years of, whatever. So, you guys have any other questions for me? Yeah.
So I work at a dance studio and I'm faculty there. And something that I think about a lot is like whether or not I can post pictures of my classes, of my kids. So the studio has disclosure.
Yeah.
The parents can sometimes be assigned. But does that cover just them or does that cover me?
You need to look at the language of the release. Because the language of the release, you need to have your employer tweak it, needs to say that the studio, including all of its employees, so that you can also have those rights. Because right now, if the release isn't broad enough, you do not have rights
Right.
to those images. You don't have rights to the images. You don't have rights to the identities.
Okay.
So, just have them release you as well. Anything else? That's a great question. I meant to actually put that in my thing, because I wrote an article for the Ohio Dance newsletter on that issue. And I do, sometimes if you read the Ohio Dance newsletter, I do write on the social media. I write on issues that are legal and that touch the dance community. I try. I am not a dancer, I am not a creative person. I am a lawyer, that's it. But I have the privilege of being on the Board of Trustees for Ohio Dance, and they put up with me, and we try to intersect their areas of knowledge and all these wonderful creative people who get to do these beautiful things with their bodies, and then there's me. And I don't bring much to the table, but we try to make it work and have everything for everybody so that we can share all of our talents or whatever it is I do. So, is there any other questions? Thank you guys so much for your time.